My image defines my worth.
I must stay positive.
I'm fine.
No one cares.
I am too
I am unlovable.
I must do it
My
alone.
story isn't important.
It's okay to be honest. I am enough.
Somebody cares.
I do not have to do this alone.
I am imperfectly perfect.
My beauty comes from within.
My voice matters.
I am loved. It's okay to not be okay.
My story has value.
All right, so for day 7 today, we are talking about the lie that we tell us that I'm fine, which I'm fine is something that, when you see somebody pass somebody in the hall or on the street and you say, hey, how's your day going? I'm fine, I'm good.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I mean, I was talking off camera a little bit a few days ago with you guys, and I know I feel that I think everybody kind of has their, the lie is like I'm fine, but I feel like everybody has their variation on that. I know some people are like, oh, I'm okay. Or what I used to do when I was like struggling with depression is I would say, I'm tired. So when people would ask like, oh, like you kind of seem like, well, my mom, you're in a funk, I'd be like, oh, I'm tired. And I think it's just a way of like deflecting your emotions, trying not to deal with what's happening. I also feel like, so many people, I know we were talking about this a little earlier at my work, everyone's like, oh, how are you doing today? And I feel like it's less of like people actually wanting to know how you're doing. That's where you're always like, I'm fine, because you don't want to tell somebody that, what you're dealing with.
Yeah, they're just trying to, they're almost trying to sound like they care about you.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't.
Yeah, I think it's gotten to the point where asking how are you doing it's lost all meaning. It's like completely numb to people. It's basically just like saying hi to them. It's not actually like a self check-in. It's just more of a greeting. And I think if we were to answer that question more honestly, it would benefit us because we'd be able to share how we feel with other people.
Yeah, I think it's gotten to the point where even some people, if they say hello, people will say, I'm good, because they just immediately think that's what the people want to think. They're just like, how are you doing? I'm good. Just immediately. It's the immediate response.
I think sometimes, what ends up happening is, yes, it's a greeting for a lot of the time now. You're just walking past someone, well, how are you? I'm good. Even someone you don't know. But sometimes, it's kind of led to that if someone that actually cares about us, they're like, I know you're struggling. How are you doing? Sometimes we're just like, I'm great. And you're not. You might be actually really struggling. But I think sometimes when we just constantly put ourselves through just ignoring the fact that we're struggling and just saying, I'm good, I'm fine, whatever. And then when someone actually cares and wants to help you, you kind of put that off too, and I think that's hard.
Well, and we were having a conversation earlier about that. Sometimes you don't know what's behind that. I'm fine, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's more important to if somebody's asking, give it to them.
Yeah, and it's kind of tough to gauge, if you want to actually push somebody on that. You hear I'm fine, what does that actually mean? Do you want to push your friend on actually sharing more, or are they saying I'm fine because I don't want to bring this up with you, or maybe I'm not comfortable talking about this topic with you?
I think sometimes people worry, especially me. Sometimes I am worried when someone cares about me and wants to know. Sometimes I'm like, well, if I bring it up, it becomes even more real. If they're like, oh, how are you? And I say, I've been, whatever it is, I've been really worried that I'm going to trip and scrape my knee or whatever it is. Then I feel like part of me is worried. I say that out loud and then it becomes even bigger. And part of me feels that way. And I think a lot of us might feel that way, but it's not true. I think sometimes I fail to recognize that getting help is getting help, and it's not you're not, if you reach out for help, you're not going to get worse.
Yeah,
I feel like some people don't tell people how they're doing because they're scared. And they don't want it to become a bigger issue, and they don't want people to be worried about them, and they don't want people to almost embarrass them because they're talking to them in public about depression or like physically or mentally wise.
I definitely think that, like you were saying earlier, how it becomes real when you talk about it. Like, that's really scary. Like, something that you had been struggling with, and you finally start talking about it, and you realize that it's a real thing and it's true. It's almost like I'm fine is like a shield to what you're kind of hiding.
But back to what you were saying, that I think a lot of it breaks down to like communication. That knowing, I mean, if I'm talking to one of my friends, and like we were talking about this earlier too, that like somebody might just want to be talking to me, and they want to get away from whatever they're dealing with. And I think that like understanding, like, I'm fine, like I'm dealing with something, but I really am trying to like take a step away from it for a minute.
Like for one of my friends, sometimes that's my main cue. Is we're talking and I'm like, how are you? And they're like, how are you? Like they just won't even answer the question. And then that's kind of my cue. I'm like, okay, tell me about you, because you're just asking me so many questions about me. How are you? Like, I can tell something's up.
Well, I think, too, if this conversation is based in breaking down the stigma with mental health, mental wellness, the journeys we're on, I wonder, too, if I think those cues are important, or Nick, I think you were saying, like, sometimes people just want to get away from talking about that for a moment, so they say they're fine. And I think back to the beginning of this particular conversation where Sam said, like, if we start answering them more honestly, like, we can change the way, we can change this stigma, we can break through this. And so I think sometimes it's not always about, let's just be an open book and put all our stuff out there all the time. Like, Nick, you work at a grocery store. It doesn't mean that, like, if you ask me how I'm doing, I'm having a bad day, that I'm going to just pause and lay it all out there right then and there. But I would, so one of my cues is, I'm living the dream. And instead of saying that to you and giving that like little smile and moving on, it could be, hey, today's a bit of a struggle, but thanks for asking. Like, I appreciate you asking. And like, even just that honesty in that of like, I just wonder like what we can do for ourselves in the culture around kind of masking this.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
That's totally true. Like I don't think anybody who asks if you're like, how are you doing, needs to get like the boatload of stuff that you're dealing with. But that I think we were talking about that a little earlier. That like you don't need to always be okay, and accepting that. And I mean, the more acceptable we make it, I mean, then when you ask somebody and they're like, like I'm dealing with some stuff, but it's more acceptable than that. Like, oh, well, like, I didn't actually want to know.
Yeah, I came across a really cool interaction when I was working, where when someone was asked how they were, they just said, it's been a really long day. And that's a really big step in normalizing not being okay.
And that we can, as community, as people that are in varying forms of relationship with each other, one relationship being someone that walks into a bank or a store and the person that's there helping them, that is a form of relationship. Whatever that relationship is, being able to accept that as the full answer too, right? Of like holding that whatever that is, they know that's their story. They know that it's been a long day, but someone holding that and hearing that is a big piece of that too. So what is something that helps you maybe kind of take that mask of I'm fine off?
I guess the first step would probably be diagnosing when I'm not fine. And so then I know when I can be more honest with people and when I actually am fine. Because there's a very fine line between answering that you're fine and being fine. So if you can differentiate between the two, then you'll be able to answer more honestly, and we can be able to talk about those topics with more ease.
I think I was just thinking about that. I mean, taking a step back and being like, if I'm always putting on this like facade that I'm okay, and other people see that, they're gonna be like, oh, well, like, you know, everybody else is okay. I must be like feeling this alone. I think we just need to, yeah, like you can feel your feels and that's okay.
And sometimes, like, I feel like it feels good. Like, one of the ways that sometimes I will cope is not to, like, lay it on someone, but, you know, if you are, like, at the grocery store or you're doing something and someone is just like, how are you? And you just to say, like, I'm kind of struggling this week. And then you can just move on. But to just, like, say it out loud, say it to someone, and know that you're heard. But then not having to, like, explain it to someone that's a big part in your life and then them being worried about you and you having to explain all of that. But just saying, I'm just struggling today. And then someone just being like, oh, well, I hope you get better and I hope you feel better.
Everybody feels that way. So.
Yeah. But just, like, finding, like, reassurance and comfort in, like, a smaller way rather than, like, a big way.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody.
Everybody, thank you for continuing to be a part of these 10 days of conversations. Today, we look at another lie that we tend to believe, the lie that I'm fine. And as you heard in the conversation, there was some energy around this one. I think it would be safe for me to assume that we all believe that we can just kind of mask behind this. So, sensing that energy from the video, I hope that you can be a part of changing this in your life. That you can be a part of helping people know that there are those that are willing to listen to the actual answer to these questions. And that we can be a part of that for each other. Please know that there continues to be general resources available, resources to let you know that seeking professional help is never a weakness. It's value in who you are, and also resources around this particular topic for today as well. Those are available not just for these 10 days, but will continue to be, so we can keep having this conversation and keep breaking down the silence and such that we put around these conversations. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for the commitments that you have in being a part of it. And we'll see you tomorrow for day 8 in our conversation. Thank you.